Good evening and welcome to Iowa News and Views. My name's Joe Balcom. I'm the host of the program. I'm a county supervisor over here in Johnson County, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I'd like to welcome again the 4 new cities that joined us in the last couple of weeks, and that'd be the city of Burlington, Dubuque, Fort Dodge, and of course North Liberty here in Johnson County. Iowa News and Views is a current events television program focusing on community issues and statewide issues of interest to Iowans. We have an interesting program tonight. We're going to be visiting with Carl McPherson, the state's Long-Term Care Ombudsman. But before we get to that, I'd like to talk to you about a news item that's been in the press lately about IPSCO Steel Company and some problems that they're having getting water over in Muscatine County. As you might recall, we, the state of Iowa, gave the IPSCO Steel Company about $73 million in tax advantages and tax breaks to come to our state. And one of the things that we were concerned about is the issue of wells. Recently there was an article in the Des Moines Register indicating that they had dried up, or there was concern that several wells had gone dry. 3 wells had gone dry. And originally when IPSCO decided they were going to come to Iowa, they indicated that their steel production facility, they'd be getting water from the Mississippi River. In the process of siting their facility, they decided instead to get water from the Silurian Aquifer. Neighbors in that part of the state were very concerned about that and protested that, but the Department of Natural Resources went on ahead and issued IPSCO a permit to withdraw 841 million gallons of water a year, about 16,000 gallons a minute from 6 wells. The article that recently appeared said that 3 wells went dry, and the facility, of course, is not operating at full capacity. I just want to read one of the statements here that Roger Landy, who is an attorney from Davenport representing IPSCO, said that they didn't feel, quoting, "I don't think it was any of our fault, the fact that the wells went dry." He said, "If you have 10 people with well problems, it could be that there are 10 different problems. We might have not been responsible. We are not debating the issue, but we were willing to pay. We are willing to pay." And IPSCO has paid to have those wells deepened, and we're glad that they have. However, it continues to be a concern to residents in Muscatine County about their water use. Retired well driller Dwayne Latta said the company is drawing too much water. The story says, and quoting from him, "IPSCO will be in trouble," said Latta, who lives a mile from the plant. Quote, "They need that water or they will have to shut down. They will have to go somewhere else for water, and that will probably be the Mississippi River." IPSCO, when they came to Iowa, said they'd use Mississippi River water to meet their plant's needs. They decided not to do that. People said if they go to the Silurian Aquifer, their wells would go dry, and in fact, that is what's happened, and IPSCO is being a good neighbor at this point, as they need to be, in reducing or helping people with those wells. The one well went dry was actually 3.5 miles away from their site. On another related issue in terms of wastewater from the IPSCO steel plant in Muscatine County is a permit that was issued about their wastewater discharge. And when IPSCO came to Iowa, they said that they were going to recycle most of the water they used at their steel plant. And instead they have asked the Department of Natural Resources to modify their permit to allow for the discharge of total dissolved solids to one of the streams in the neighborhood there. And the permit, the federal standard for total dissolved solids into a creek is 750 milligrams per liter. After some debate with the negotiation with the Department of Natural Resources, they have allowed better than 5 times that limit, or 4,000 milligrams per liter. The Department of Natural Resources decided to go ahead with that, and essentially some people have suggested that that amounts to essentially free waste disposal for IPSCO. I guess the question comes up, and I don't think this is a partisan issue per se, because our legislature and governor supported this, but it's to say, what are we getting for our $73 million in support to bring this plant to our state? Is IPSCO being a good corporate citizen? Are they upfront with us on those 2 water issues? There's a lot of concern about that. Another question that I would have is, why did the Department of Natural Resources issue a permit to withdraw water from the Silurian Silurian Aquifer instead of the Mississippi. And one of the other question would have to relate to why are we changing the permit requirements when both our federal and state standards for total dissolved solids are 750 milligrams per liter, yet we're going to issue a permit some 5 times greater than that. Is it politics? Is that why we're getting these permits issued, or is it just the state of how Iowa does economic development? I'd like to offer that one of the reasons that this situation is the way it is that we have a state bureaucracy that's been under Republican control through gubernatorial appointments over the past 30 years. And when you have that kind of tenure of appointments, over time, I'm not sure that we get the best policy making. Particularly when we have those kind of administrative appointments over a long period of time, the bureaucracy gets stale and not responsive. 30 years is a long time, and I think in that course of time, state agencies can develop a mentality about how they do business. Even here in Iowa, where we don't like much change, 30 years is a very long time to have one political party making all these important appointments. That's what I think. What do you think? You can send me a note here. I'm going to tell you how to get a hold of me later in the show. You can send me an email. You can write me a letter on this topic. We just hope that IPSCO starts becoming a better corporate citizen over there in eastern Iowa and starts doing what they say they're going to do. That's the news. Now let's get on with the program. We have a special guest with us tonight. His name's Carl McPherson. He's the State of Iowa's Long-Term Care Ombudsman. It's a pleasure to have you with us tonight, Carl.
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here tonight.
I don't know if you knew this or not, but we have better than 40,000 people living in our state in nursing homes and in residential care facilities around the state, and almost 900 approximate facilities. Carl McPherson is the person that is involved in ensuring that the care that people receive in those facilities is of the kind of quality we would all like to see. Carl has a very difficult job in monitoring all those facilities, addressing complaints and the like. Carl, what is your job and how long have you been doing it?
Well, primarily my job is to serve as the advocate for the residents in the facilities, which means I go into situations looking at things from the residents' perspective. I try to look at both sides of issues when they come up. I address complaints, I advocate for the protection of rights, I advocate for changes in legislation, changes in policies, regulations, as they affect residents in facilities. And I've been doing this now since December 1979, working for the Iowa Department of Elder Affairs.
Mm-hmm. Very good. What does care review mean?
Care review, as it's used in our context, refers to a volunteer advocacy component of the Ombudsman program, whereby under Iowa law, at each licensed long-term care facility, whether it's a privately owned facility or a publicly owned operated facility, must have a group of volunteers who are called care review committee members. These individuals go into the facilities at different times of the day, different days of the week. They try to ascertain what's going on in the facility. They look around, they talk to people, and they try to then address concerns if there are any. So if a resident has a problem and it's brought to the attention of a care review committee member, we ask the care review committee member to then try to work with the administrator of the facility to see if they can get it resolved right there in-house. If they cannot do that, then the responsibility they have is to bring it to my attention as the ombudsman. Mm-hmm. I pursue it through whatever avenues are available to me, because in some instances I don't go in and address complaints directly. I sometimes serve as a broker in the sense that I will assess the situation based upon the information that is sent to me. I will then determine who's in the best position to deal with it. It might be that I bring in the Department of Inspections and Appeals, which is the regulatory agency, or another entity. For instance, it might have something to do with Medicaid, so I might bring in the Department of Human Services or the Iowa Foundation for Medical Care. It could also be the federal government who gets called into situations, local law enforcement, whomever.
Sure. How many complaints are filed with your office a year, and are we seeing things on the increase or the decrease?
We have seen complaints fluctuate, and at times when there is publicity and there is media, there are media events which generate public attention, then sometimes we see more complaints being called into us because people then become aware of where they can go. As to the number of complaints, I don't know that we really have an accurate handle on the number of complaints. We have handled over 2,000 complaints over the past year between what I do and what the care review committee members handle. But there again, it depends on the reporting of those complaints, the quality of reporting, because not all the care review committee members really report everything that is brought to their attention. So I don't know that we really have a very good handle on the number of complaints that are really handled in the system.
I see. So in addition to monitoring care in nursing homes, you're also responsible for monitoring care in residential facilities where people with disabilities live, people with mental retardation and the like. How has that gone?
Well, we have care review committee members at all of these facilities. Some function better than others. As to how it's going, we're still uncertain, because one of the things that's required under state law is that every licensed healthcare facility must be inspected by the Department of Inspections and Appeals at least once every 15 months. Over the past several years, that has not been happening. At the nursing facilities, because they participate in the Medicare and Medicaid programs, they have been inspected. They're required to be inspected anywhere from a 9 to 15 month on a 9 to 15 month cycle. The residential care facilities, however, have not always been inspected. They've gone for years without inspections. So where we have that lack of adequate oversight, we hope the care review committees have been filling in the gap and going in, addressing the issues, but we really are not certain that they're doing that.
I see. You have a big job, one person doing state ombudsperson work. There are care review committees established at facilities around the state. Can you talk a little bit about the legislation creating the pilot programs for local ombudspersons?
Okay. You bring up an issue which really hasn't gone very far. You mentioned the pilot program, or demonstration projects as we've now begun calling them. But to put it into context, the federal government mandated that every state must have a long-term care ombudsman program. In Iowa, the state legislature mandated back in 1971 the existence of care review committees. So both programs have really been brought together as one unit. We don't have local ombudsmen around the state. So in a coordinated effort between representatives from the industry, representatives from the regulatory agencies, the Department of Elder Affairs, advocates, it was determined that we need to have local ombudsman programs. So the Older Iowans legislature, which is, some people refer to it as silver-haired legislature, pardon me, in some states, that's what it's called, but the Older Iowans legislature made that a priority, and they proposed to the legislature, and we supported that the legislature, the General Assembly, fund 3 demonstration projects where we would use local ombudspeople to address issues in facilities, doing primarily the same kind of things I do, but at a local level. See how it works, and then, depending on the results, then go to the legislature and point out that we do need to have local ombudspeople at all the geographic regions covered by the 13 area agencies on aging. The legislature did not see fit to fund it. The first year that it was proposed, we didn't really get much support from the governor's office. The second time around, we got a little more support, but it didn't go very far. Each time it has died in committee, or shall we say it failed to move out of committees where it just got buried. This year, in addition to the pilot projects, what I had proposed to the legislature was that they incorporate the federal language for the Ombudsman program into state code. Mm-hmm. That also died in committee. But because we are on a biennium system, mm-hmm. the bills are still alive. So we hope that members of the public, the viewing audience, families of residents, care review committee members will contact their legislators and point out the need to have those pieces of legislation move through the process successfully.
That's a good point. We're visiting this evening with Carl McPherson. He's the state long-term care ombudsman for the state of Iowa. He oversees the care in nursing homes and residential care facilities to make sure it's of a high quality in our state. We're talking about some legislation that passed or was debated this last session in the Iowa General Assembly. Seniors in the state of Iowa need to get better organized, it seems to me, of some of these bills that the older Iowa legislature has promulgated and pushed forward over the last few years. If we're going to be successful in that effort, it seems to me seniors need to take a bigger role in visiting with their legislators about that. What is the prospects, Carl, this next session for moving this legislation along?
Well, you've hit the nail on the head that seniors need to take a more active role in the process. Pardon me. But not just seniors. People who are affected by what goes on in long-term care facilities. And that means all of us. Because by our tax dollars, we are paying for the care that many residents receive in healthcare facilities. By our relationship with residents, whether they're friends, families, just about anybody you turn to knows someone in a facility. So we're all affected. So we all need to take the bull by the horn and really start educating our legislators on the need for action on their part to ensure that residents are protected in our facilities. So educating legislators on their responsibilities to provide for the needs of those who are unable to advocate for themselves is something that really needs to happen.
That's good. It's kind of almost a baptism by fire system where none of us really ever expect that we're going to be in a nursing home. True. And so we don't pay much attention to these issues until it hits home. And I think it's unfortunate. That's we're kind of creatures of that kind of approach to things, but hopefully more and more people will start paying attention to this.
Well, I hope so. And a lot of times people think this relates only to the elderly. And as you've pointed out, it pertains to people who have some mental retardation, who have some mental illness, developmental disabilities. And many of the people who end up going into facilities really don't suffer from any of those maladies. They happen to have an accident. You know, we have young people who are younger than you and I who end up in a nursing home because of a diving accident, a traffic accident, something. I had a friend who his residency in a long-term care facility was brought about by his falling off a ladder painting his house.
Sure.
And he ended up in a nursing home.
If you were looking for a nursing home, or one of our viewers were looking for a nursing home for a loved one, what would be 3 or 4 things that one would look for in trying to make a decision about that?
One would be, first of all, we need to get the people who are going to be going in involved in the process.
Okay.
A lot of times we go out, we find the place and we say, Mom, this is where you're going. mom, dad, spouse, they need to be involved in that process. Even if they are unable to physically go to the facility, they need to be involved. People need to go to the facilities. They need to visit them. And I encourage them to visit them at hours other than just 9 to 5. Okay? Because weekends, evenings are when administrative personnel are out. They're gone. The administrator's not there. The director of nursing is not there. And so when the cat's away, we know what usually happens. So they get a much better picture by varying the times they go, the days they visit, and really go in, talk to residents. Find out from residents if they had to do it all over again, if this would be the place that they would select to reside as a resident. Because if you just ask a resident, do you really like being in a nursing home as a resident, more than likely they're going to say, no, I don't like being here. It doesn't mean that that's a bad facility. It's just that nobody wants to be a resident in a nursing home. But if we were to frame it around, if you had to do it over and had to select a facility, would this be the one you select? Seeing how staff members relate with each other, going in, letting their senses determine what's really going on. They go into the facility, they can be looking around to see if call lights are on and glance at their watches and see how fast people respond to those call lights. 20 minutes later, are those call lights still on, nobody having taken care of a problem? That will give them an indication of responsiveness of staff. How staff and residents are relating with each other. That will give them an indication. A facility, and even the nursing home that has the most difficult clients, should not smell of urine and BM, bowel movement.
Right.
It should not smell. There's no excuse for that. Granted, there are times when people will have an accident, and you might be able to detect that odor at that time, but a short while later, I walk down that hall, I shouldn't be still smelling that odor, or I shouldn't be knocked over when I walk into the facility. Trying to locate facilities that are close to home. Finding out if that facility accepts Title 19, Medicaid payments, because there are some facilities which are not certified to accept Title 19, and that's a choice they make. Nursing homes are the ones that are able to do that. What if the person runs out of money and they will be going on Title 19? Find out from the facility what will happen to my loved one in that case, and really see what kind of responses they get.
That's good. Those are some real good concrete suggestions.
Also look at the survey results. Because that's public document.
In terms of the inspections
Inspection reports by the Department of Inspections and Appeals. Check those out, see how they really fare with the regulatory agency. And not just look at the last one, but ask to see several.
Sure.
Going back over the years and see the history.
That's good. There was a report done, I think this was in the early part of 1997.
Well, actually, that was in December 1996.
Okay. The Quad City Times did a story of nursing home care and care provided in the Quad City area. And this is a picture of that. You're quoted fairly extensively in this. One of the things that came out of this story was some comments by one nursing home administrator about some of his employees who happen to be gay, and in recent weeks those employees have been fired. Was that about the quality of care being provided at that facility by those workers? What are the issues here? Briefly.
Technically, that's a staff issue that doesn't fall within my purview. However, I view it as something that could inherently affect many residents. Because my understanding is that the administrator fired the staff people, simply because they are homosexuals. Nothing said about the quality of their work, but there was mention about the quality of their skin. And he fired them on that basis. So if homosexuality is the basis on which he's going to discriminate, which unfortunately, when I asked the Civil Rights Commission to pursue this, they said it's not a covered class.
Right.
So, and I'm asking your viewers to advocate for legislative changes in the process to get that class covered. However, if residents are homosexuals, are they going to be kicked out? And so we have to be very diligent about pursuing that.
Sure.
How long ago this really occurred, I'm uncertain. But the administrator fired them, and this person also owns the facility.
I saw that. Later in the month, we're going to be having the director of the Iowa Civil Rights Commission on the show, and we will visit with him about that issue at that point in time and see what his reaction to that is as well. It concerns us, concerns me greatly. You've been watching Iowa News and Views. I'd like to thank Carl McPherson. Our time is running out here. The state's Long-Term Care Ombudsman, for being with us and sharing some information about his job and the importance of ensuring that we take good care of people in nursing homes and in residential care facilities in our state. We are Iowa News and Views. We produce a new show every other week. We're on every week. Where you're seeing us, we're on at the same time. We encourage you to continue to tune in and tell your friends about us. In a moment, we're going to tell you how to get a hold of Carl if you have any questions for him. Give you his phone number and ask him anything you need to ask him. I'd like to thank our sponsors around the state who make this show possible to be seen around the state. I'd like to thank our crew who continues to put out a terrific effort, even though the footing can be kind of loose from time to time. And I'd like to thank our financial contributors for helping out and making this show possible. We're looking for ideas for shows. Please, again, we'll give you some information on how to get that information to us. We're looking for video clips. If you've got something on video you think would be interesting, if you know anybody that'd be a good guest, or if you want to be a guest, get in hold of us and let us know. You've been watching Iowa News and Views here in Iowa. Don't forget, this is just a TV program, and what's important is what you are doing every day in your community to make it a better place to be. My name's Joe Balcom, and thanks for joining us.